2 to 3 years, we're going to have a Stanley Cup in Buffalo.
It's a real hope this time, not like regular Buffalo hope.
Now, this is such an intimate and on-the-ground look at pure fandom. What was the inspiration for the film, and how did the structure assert itself once you began the process of putting it together?
So the original inspiration for the film was a 9-week hiatus from my job on The Office. And I happened to be back in Buffalo, coincided with the Sabres Stanley Cup run. No one had expected them really to get that far that year. And they went to the Eastern Conference Finals, lost in Game 7 after 5 of their 6 starting defenders went down with illness or injury. And the camaraderie in the community that whole 9 weeks, it was unlike anything I'd felt really, having lived in other cities at that point. And when the team came back from Carolina, there were just hundreds of fans at the airport with "Thank you, Saber" signs. People I know had their hearts just crushed. And so it was that loyalty that started this idea of like, oh, this is something special, right? It's people put so much into it because it's a city that feels kind of put down and let down often. And so much hope goes into the sports teams. And then it was still let down, but they were so excited. And that was the initial idea. That was 2006. And this idea just sort of percolated in my head and I didn't know what to do with it. And then 2011, I was back for a weekend. Terry Pagula had just bought the team, was talking about winning a Stanley Cup in the next 3 years. The entire city was just buzzing with that sort of like, it's a bold claim for Buffalo. And so all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, I have to do this right now, because if we win, this isn't a story about winners. Anyone can cheer for a winner. It's easy to do that.
Yeah.
Doing this is harder. And so it just sort of crystallized that it should be a documentary, and a documentary about these people, the people that show up and thank them for the effort that was put in, the people that are loyal through all the losses. And so I filmed 13 people over 4 years. I purposefully overcast the movie just because they each needed a story. They needed a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I didn't know what was happening in any of these people's lives. So that came together. And then, we cut it down to 3 people in the editing process. And that's what you'll see in the final film.
The 3 stories you focus on have a difficulty to overcome. One, of course, being old age, and that's an overcoming you don't necessarily want. But how does this persistence and achievement parallel the essence of sport in the context of your film?
The Buffalo Sabres and even the city of Buffalo have always been considered underdogs in a way. And it's the spirit of resilience that people appreciate about not just the teams, but the fans themselves. And I think that sense of resilience and perseverance really comes through in each of the 3 stories, whether it's a choice or a bad hand that you were dealt, that people persevere through these and they come out with a different perspective when you go through the trials.
Buffalo is going through what a lot of Rust Belt cities, including Cleveland, Detroit, even Chicago, have gone through, a time of reinvention and revival. What impresses you about the city's comeback, especially in the timeline when you began this project?
Certainly when I began the project, there was no talk of anything going on in the city in 2011. So it was very interesting, again, doing like a verite on the ground documentary. Like no one would have seen any of this or even pictured any of this. You're so used to projects not happening. So even one of the things we show in the movie is the Canal Side project where the old Aud site used to be. Different things slowed it down for different reasons. And then it actually got finished and it's this gorgeous rink. When nothing happens for so long, it's so exciting when it happens.
Right.
And then you have to take a moment and pause. Like some of the areas that I focused on didn't see that. Like there was no trickle down, right? So I think the challenge going forward is to make sure that everyone in the city can benefit from some way, that it's not just a benefit for tourists or outsiders or a few, just making
the
sure
wealthy.
it's for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here in Chicago, we know something about long droughts of championships. What makes Buffalo's current, the Buffalo Sabres' current streak different from your point of view than any other current non-playoff streak in the sports world? And how does that play again into the context of your film?
So I think the one thing that makes Buffalo different is that when you look at what were considered the four big sports, right? So that's men's ice hockey, men's football, men's baseball, men's basketball. Yeah. Those are the ones with the large TV contracts, that tend to get the notice. And Buffalo has never won a championship in those. They've won in the minor league versions of those before they joined the majors, right? Our lacrosse team has won. Our women's hockey team has won. But as far as these big community joining sports, they have never won in these championships. So it's this special drought. Like, certainly there have been 90-year droughts in other cities, but like Buffalo hasn't gone that long just because they haven't existed in those four sports for that long. So the drought is technically a never drought in those respects. The other thing that really drew me to Buffalo was the Rust Belt city aspect of it too. It has that Rust Belt sense of loss that everyone, especially in my generation, grew up with, and also the sports sense of loss.
Yeah. You were with The Office in various capacities for 86 of its 201 episodes. How would you characterize the collaboration on such a legendary and unusual series? And what was the general reaction of your former colleagues to its high-level revival during the pandemic?
I was there from season 1 and I left during like a third of the way through season 8. So
okay.
There's no way. Season 9 was not that many episodes. Right. So as far as the revival, I mean, everyone's kind of enjoyed it. Like there was, someone who's like, who has office swag? I donated all my stuff to Goodwill and now like my niece really wants something. Like who has something they can give? And it's really nice. Like I had one acting job. And so with SAG, you get residual checks and they were down to like $7, like 4 times a year. And like, normally it's what happens. They go down over time and they all of a sudden started going up. It's such a crazy thing. So you see like the success of the Office Ladies podcast and right. Just, I have my winter jacket is an Office jacket. Like I get compliments on it by 20-year-olds all the time. Like people who would never have been able to watch it would have been past their bedtime when it was on TV. So it's actually, it's a lot of fun. It was a special show to be on. It's one of those things where everyone talks about shows being like family, but it really felt that way. It was people you saw every day, but you liked seeing them every day.
Final question. Hockey to me is one of the most unusual professional sports in just its invention and evolution, but I guess all pro sports are like that. In the context of the film, and to use a cliche, how is hockey a metaphor for life?
I think I'll paraphrase Mark, who's one of the people I profiled in the movie. And what he says he likes about hockey is the fact that it's all about hard work. It's a sport that requires not just all the training that goes into it, the mental preparation and just a ton of stamina to get through that sport. And so I think the hard work is what he relates to in life is, that's everyone has to overcome something and it's hard work, that sense of the sport that I think resonates with a lot of its fans.
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2022.